You're listening to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast, the Bitcoin podcast for OGs and intermediaries. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and like this episode. Also, read the new BTCT KVR magazine. This episode is sponsored by Wasabi Wallet, Crypto Steel, Shop in a Bit, and Sato Dime. Thank you for listening.
Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. I am Vlad and today I'm joined by the two co-founders of a project that's called Firefish. To my right, in this order, you have first of all Martin and Igor. Their last names don't matter, that's what we established. And they are working on something which is essentially BlockFi without the company. It's very interesting. You can basically take a loan against the Bitcoin that you already have, so you don't have to sell. And as far as I understand, you get money in your bank account and you don't pay tax on that. How does that work? So please go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Vlad. Welcome to Prague. Thank you for having us on your podcast. So, in simple terms, as you rightly said, Firefish is a Bitcoin-backed lending platform, right? And what we're trying to bring, I would say it's a new use case for Bitcoin, right? I mean, people are usually looking at Bitcoin as a store of value or a payment system, obviously because it has very, very good attributes. But what we're looking at Bitcoin slightly different, or bringing the new sort of use case into the game, and that's really, as you said, using Bitcoin as an asset, as a collateral that you can use, as almost like your basically family or private bank, right? If you have any needs to fund your life situations or anything similar, you use your Bitcoin as the asset, get the loan, and basically get funding for whatever needs you have. So, and you are using Bitcoin as a super collateral. So we can go into obviously details in terms of how it works, but basically that's the principle or the nature how we're looking at Firefish and Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Maybe I'll use some other words for saying the same. Maybe just imagine as a Bitcoiner that you are in a situation that you need funds for whatever is making your life better, like you want to fund your education or your healthcare costs or maybe some investment or whatnot. And then you might be facing some dilemma, like, do I sell my Bitcoin, my precious asset, or should I maybe take out a peer-to-peer loan in fiat? I think it can be savvy. Just maybe to clarify one thing, like we are not advocating fiat in any sense. Actually, quite the contrary. We are advocating maybe it makes sense for a lot of people to create a liability in fiat, to be effectively short fiat. And this is what we are doing.
It's also interesting because you can basically take fiat, but you're not selling your Bitcoin and you're not going to have to pay capital gain tax or whatever. But to whom are you going to pay that loan? And who gives you back your Bitcoin? How does this work?
I would start maybe with the fact that, or there's a couple of elements that are important when we speak about Firefish. The first thing is, and you mentioned the name BlockFi, I believe. We are a non-custodial platform in the first place, right? So really, your Bitcoin is not sent to Firefish. It's not sent to any custodian. It's locked in a very specific, what you could call a smart contract on layer 1 on Bitcoin directly. So that's one thing. The other point is that you will get a fiat cash loan against your Bitcoin, right? And again, it's very important to understand that Firefish is not the provider of the loan, is not provider of the cash basically that you receive. We are a marketplace, in other words. It's a peer-to-peer marketplace where on both sides you have the borrowers and you have what we call investors, right? So people with free cash, they can invest in Bitcoin-backed loans. You as a borrower would actually receive the cash from a particular person or an institution, in other words, right? So the transaction basically happens between two people or two entities. It can be institution, it can be a person. And the fiat transaction right now at this point in time would be settled through a standard bank transfer, but we're also working on some other additional channels that will allow you to basically do the fiat transactions between these two people. So that's the core. It's a marketplace and you have a peer-to-peer relationship with a particular counterparty.
So that's really interesting because let's say that I have a lot of fiat money and maybe I want to buy Bitcoin on the cheap. Maybe I say I'm going to basically give you this loan at 10% lower than the market price. And I'm taking a chance. I'm hoping that he's not going to pay back the loan, so I get to keep the Bitcoin. And I think that's the speculative part of basically buying Bitcoin on the cheap.
Do you want to say anything about it? I would say, look, from our own experience, and one thing we haven't mentioned, we call Firefish the Bitcoin back everything platform, right? Because it's we are trying to expand the use cases for Bitcoin or for holding Bitcoin as an asset, and obviously speculation might be one of them, right? But if we look at the track record since we launched the platform, there are interesting use cases actually that people are using Firefish for, be it your standard, yes, I want to buy more Bitcoin use cases, right? You just take a loan, get more leverage, buy more Bitcoin. There you go. Then there are other use cases such as buying a house, buying a car, investing in business as well, right? We did have a couple of cases where people were trying to invest money into startups. They had most of their assets or an important portion of their assets in Bitcoin, and they never wanted to sell Bitcoin, right? Because they knew that or they believe that in the future Bitcoin would appreciate. So the speculative part, as you mentioned, might not necessarily be the first use case that people think about. And secondly, as it's an open market space, right, or marketplace, people can see where the interest rates are. It is pretty competitive. If someone goes to the market and says like, hey, I'm gonna give you money for 2%, hoping that you're not gonna repay the loan back. Well, good luck. What if I repay, right? I mean, it's. I think the important element to consider there is that normally we're operating with the loan to value ratio. So you're taking a particular amount of loan, and the value of your collateral should be in a particular amount. Normally, we would be talking about 50%, right? So if I want to get $100,000, I would need to deposit or lock $200,000 worth of Bitcoin, right? So in that case, I would think twice whether I want to get liquidated or not pay my loan back or not. So I'm sure in the future there might be these kind of edge use cases, but for the time being, really most of our users have been really appreciating the fact that they can either get more leverage, they can invest in businesses, get funding for other opportunities they have. So that's most of the use cases we've been seeing so far.
From a technical point of view, how does this work? You told me that there's a multi-sig involved. I've also had Martin Habovstiak, I hope I pronounced that correctly. He told me that he was the main coder of the project. And he explained to me something about a multi-sig, but I'm not sure if I remember correctly, and maybe that the listeners don't remember either. Can you tell me more details about what's in the background of this system?
Of course. Maybe I'll start with a short version for less technical users. What we actually achieved with the construction on Bitcoin main chain is that basically output of the escrow is restricted. It can be only spent in two specific directions. It can be only spent back to borrower, especially when they repay the loan, or it is spent to the liquidator. That's an entity that is there to settle the loan if it was not settled by the borrower. Technically, it could be lender himself. There are two ways of implementation. This is it in a nutshell. How do we achieve it? We just lock Bitcoin in 3 of 3 multi-sig, and maybe I'll start over. Maybe I'll start with defining the roles in the contract. So obviously you have a borrower and lender in the contract. Then I mentioned this third role of liquidator, and then we actually implemented 2 general roles: payment oracle and price oracle. There are actually just two kind of data that you need to resolve the contract, or to know. If we look at it as a smart contract, there are some states that the contract can be in, be it repayment or default or liquidation. And there are 2 kinds of data that you need to know to resolve the contract. And they are either payment data, data from the banking system, if the loan was repaid or not, or the price data that are attesting to the price of the Bitcoin at any given time. So basically what we are doing, we are locking Bitcoin in a 3 of 3 multi-sig when one of the key is held by payment oracle, another by the price oracle, and third one by the borrower himself. And actually what we do, we create a set of pre-signed Bitcoin transactions that represent each of the states, be it like transaction that is going to be broadcasted when the loan is repaid, transaction that is broadcasted when the loan has defaulted, transaction that is going to be broadcasted when the loan is going to be liquidated, and the last one is zombie apocalypse transaction that is actually valid from the day one. It just has a time log on it, so you can broadcast it. Is basically if the oracles don't do any action whatsoever, if there is a zombie apocalypse or something of this kind, you can be sure that you can still recover your Bitcoin from the escrow. So I don't know if it was not too much of the information.
That was actually good, because I was going to ask you about, the Bitcoin network does not know what's happening outside of it. You have that multi-sig contract that is on chain, but Bitcoin doesn't know if the payment takes place. So how do the oracles work, and who are they? Can they be banks, or are they people?
The way how the system is designed, those are general roles. And at this very moment, both oracles are implemented on our side. It's our implementation of both price and payment oracle. As we are holding those keys, but what we can do with the keys is we can sign one of these transactions. We can basically send Bitcoin back to borrower or to the liquidator, nothing else. So this is a security proposition. Over time, it would be definitely better if we, for example, implement DLC kind of scheme for the price oracle.
Wasabi Wallet is unfairly private. It's the most advanced and most used Bitcoin privacy wallet, with 500,000 downloads across Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, as well as thousands of fresh new Bitcoins getting mixed every month. Wasabi makes use of the new generation Wabi-Sabi engine to create mega coin joins, thus mixing your Bitcoins with those of hundreds of other users. For amounts lower than 0.01 BTC and remixes, you pay no coordination fee. Even if you don't use CoinJoins, Wasabi Wallet has a native Tor integration and downloads block filters to help you keep your network level and public key privacy. Download Wasabi Wallet for free today at wasabiwallet.io and experience the future of Bitcoin privacy.
Okay, so obviously we could improve the scheme by implementing DLCs, for example, as a way to improve payment oracles, or some other cool cryptography on the payment oracle side as well. But still in our thoughts. But there are ways how to improve it.
Before we started the interview and we were still talking in the hallway, you told me something about basically replicating covenants. with the code that you have and the fact that covenants would make it a bit more efficient?
Okay, so how we see our tech is basically a little bit of a workaround that allows like similar functionality that covenants would allow. Basically, what we are doing, we are restricting the output of our escrow contract in a way that it can be spent in a specific conditions to the specific address. This is what covenants in general should allow on the level of the Bitcoin script, as far as I know. So this is how I mean it.
So who is this for, really? Do you have a target audience in mind? I think that some Bitcoiners are going to watch this and be like, no, that's supporting the fiat system. We never want to sell. We never want to borrow. We don't want to do anything. But I guess there's a target audience of people who are going to make this project more or less successful. And when you think about people using it, who are they really?
When we think about borrowers, those are definitely Bitcoiners, like us, like we are. I'm just gonna repeat it, like we are not advocating the fiat system whatsoever. We are just saying that maybe if you have a liability in fiat and you are short the fiat, you are basically benefiting from the erosion of purchasing power of fiat currency. I think it might be a wise decision to do for many of us. So I think those the users are mainly Bitcoiners on the borrower side, institutions who are holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet, whoever that might be. And actually, our contract is built in a way that the lender, the investor, like the second side of the transaction, doesn't need to hold any cryptographic material, such private keys. So actually, that would allow the entities from the traditional finance to interact and fund Bitcoin-backed loans without touching Bitcoin whatsoever. Might be a value for some of the traditional finance institutions. So we see very different use cases and very different possible users.
The one thing I would add there maybe is as well, not always or not everybody, not all Bitcoiners might appreciate the fact that they're sitting on an asset that has more value than just the capital appreciation, right? So obviously we all want it to go to the moon, if I'm even allowed to say this, but I guess the key principle here is that, you know, if you have an asset that not only appreciates over time, but you can actually sort of extract the monetary value and use it in your real life, as I mentioned, investments in what have you. That's a slightly different mindset, right? Of course, we understand that no one wants to sell their Bitcoins, no one wants to lose their Bitcoins, but make it work, right? Just like, the richest people do. They sit on assets and they take loans against their assets, right? So because their assets are appreciating over time more, and the inflation is eating more of the purchasing power of the fiat currency than the interest they would be paying on those loans, right? So you would be almost like in a perpetuity borrowing against your asset while still keeping the asset, right? So it's just using your Bitcoin in a smart way, using it as a real asset that can as we mentioned at the very beginning, can act as your private bank, right? I have some funding needs today. I want to send my kids to the school, or I want to buy more Bitcoin. Well, where can I get the cash? Use your Bitcoin as the collateral, as the asset, get the money paid back with the interest, which usually is lower than the inflation rate, or obviously the capital appreciation. So that's I think a slightly different shift or a shift in the mindset for the borrowers.
By holding the keys, do you think that Firefish has legal liability and people are going to sue you if something goes wrong? Do you think about this a lot?
Well, I would just start with the fact that our first employee in the company was a lawyer. So we both Martin and myself, we're coming from actually traditional finance, right? So please don't hate us for that. But I think we have a maybe slightly different way of looking at these things. And obviously, naturally, once you're touching the fiat payment system and the fiat world, you really need to be compliant, right? It's very difficult to hide these kind of transactions and operations in general. general. So we are taking this very seriously, of course. And let's say if you even look at the contract, right? So what's happening actually behind the curtains when you're on the platform and you're matched with a borrower, or you're the lender, so you're matched with a borrower, you're actually signing a bilateral loan agreement, right? So and that loan agreement, we've spent months and months kind of building it with our legal team, really to make sure that all the potential edge cases are captured there, and we really took our time to make sure that from the legal perspective everything is kosher, and that if some sort of edge case happens, everybody would be on the safe side actually.
But you mentioned that you have this agreement that was made with lawyers and is made to cover all the edge cases. Does this mean that Firefish can be banned in certain jurisdictions?
That's a tough one. If we can be banned, I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of what's happening actually, so Firefish is a platform. It's a software provider in a way, right? We are not touching fiat. We're not touching even Bitcoin, right? We are only helping you with our code to lock your Bitcoin on the network. We are also, as I mentioned, we're not providers of the fiat loans, right? So consumer credit and these kind of regulations are not affecting us, right? So. God knows I'm not, familiar about or familiar with all the jurisdictions and the nitty-gritty details. But from the perspective of, or from the nature of the business, we are literally just helping with our software two parties to sign a bilateral loan agreement and facilitate, the activity of the oracles, who are basically just saying that yes, a transaction happened or not, and where's the price of the Bitcoin. Right, so I'm not saying no, that they wouldn't ban us anywhere, but from the legal standpoint, at least in European Union, which is our initial focus, we have even a legal opinion that really our setup is clear and is fully legal or fully compliant.
But still, back to a question, somebody can try to ban us, but honestly, good luck with that. I mean, we are a website that matches two people to interact with each other, and we are providing them to use our software they can use. Because what happens on the background is that once you log to the platform and you are just operating our Bitcoin library on your site within your browser, and you are creating this escrow yourself, and you are locking the Bitcoin yourself, we are just assisting you with providing the software, and that's it. So if somebody wants to ban us, that we are providing soon to be open source software to you for your own use, good luck with that. I don't think it's going to be banned whenever.
CryptoSteel is the original Bitcoin cold storage backup, and it's been innovating self-custody since 2013. Designed and manufactured in Europe from the finest and most resistant stainless steel, the CryptoSteel cassette and the CryptoSteel capsule are industry standards. These cold storage devices are made to resist house fires, extreme floods, and physical shocks. You can also use CryptoSteel to store your important passwords, BIP39 passphrase, or Nostr private keys. Buy your CryptoSteel today from CryptoSteel.com and use promo code BTCTKVR to get a 10% discount. CryptoSteel. Secure your Bitcoin like an OG.
From your description, it makes me think about platforms like Hodl, which do something similar. They're the providers of the service. They allow people to interact with each other to buy and sell Bitcoin. There's that multi-sig contract, and they can do some, I'm not sure what they call it, they can be the judge of the situation. If there's a conflict, I think it's dispute resolution. Mm-hmm. That's the correct term for it. So does Firefish have any of these dispute resolution roles, and how can they play out? You send the money back to the loaner or to the borrower in the event that something goes wrong?
So I guess this is a question particularly relevant to the fiat transactions, right? So what can happen? So let's say you and me, you're the borrower, I'm the lender, and I'm supposed to send you money, right? So I send you money, or at least on the platform I say or claim that I have sent you the money, right? And then 2 days later you say, well, I still haven't received anything. In fiat world, if it's a bank-to-bank or within a bank transaction, no issues should be happening. But we know, especially if you're doing offshore transactions or you're using SWIFT, if you're using, for example, there's a mistake in the code, what can happen? What we call SWIFT limbo, where a party sends the money and they do indeed send the money, and it gets stuck somewhere because there's a wrong SWIFT code or something similar. Then we need to find a way. Like, okay, so what actually happened? We need to find the proof that actually the money's sitting somewhere in the pipes. It hasn't landed on the borrower's account, because the worst case that could happen, or actually can't happen with our procedures. But imagine that you're the borrower, you would have both Bitcoin and money, right? So basically that's the worst case scenario. But again, as I mentioned, it can't really happen. So we've built a resolution procedure, particularly looking at the fiat transactions when really there's a dispute between the parties that I've sent you the money but I haven't received the money. In that case, we have a particular number of steps that are actually helping both parties to find out, okay, what's the final state. We actually did have a couple of cases like this, and it was literally due to the fact that the bank code was wrong or the SWIFT code was wrong or something similar. But we managed to resolve those really using the resolution procedure. So it is a part of the contract, and we're worst case scenario, you can always obviously resort to the legal system, right? But we do believe this shouldn't happen very often. And secondly, as we mentioned, the fiat transactions at this point in time, when they're settled through direct bank transfers, are sort of easy to use, but they're not the most convenient way of doing it. So we are also looking into other channels that would make the overall user experience much better, and then definitely would avoid this kind of need for resolution procedures.
I don't want to dox your offices, but very nearby, there is this shop which accepts Bitcoin payments. And I was thinking that there are different approaches to making Bitcoin more adopted. There is merchant adoption, which directly accepts Bitcoin, but probably uses some payments processor to exchange that Bitcoin for fiat. And then there's this other approach, which allows people to take fiat money against their Bitcoin. This way, they're going to get their Bitcoin back if they pay back the loan. But do you think that you are increasing adoption and more people are going to be using Bitcoin for payments as a consequence of this? Because I see that it's also pretty scalable, meaning that you use the fiat system for the cash and there's only one multi-sig on the chain. Do you ever think about this, about adoption and how this affects it?
Like, first of all, I think like that already now people use Bitcoin in many different ways. Like, some use it payment system properties. For somebody else, it's valuable more as a store of value system or whatnot. I'm not here to judge. Like, I love Bitcoin being a place of experimentation. And we are just trying to maybe provide or extend a slightly different use case for Bitcoin. If it is appealing for Bitcoiners to use, we'll be happy to serve them. But back to your question, I don't know whether it's, never thought about it, to be honest, so much.
I would maybe add on this the fact, what Martin mentioned, that the contract allows non-Bitcoin native entities to become lenders. I think this is actually helping to change the perspective of those, let's say, TradFi people or providers of liquidity, right? Because we do have a couple of people around us who do not own Bitcoin, never touched anything crypto in general, but they are providing liquidity, fiat liquidity into these loans because they understood how Bitcoin works. They understood that it works or acts as a collateral. So they understood all these concepts behind, and suddenly it completely changed their perception perception of what Bitcoin is, right? So it's and we know that all of us are sort of living in a Bitcoin bubble. We speak to Bitcoiners left and right, so sometimes it's difficult to differentiate, who's who. But from our experience after this last couple of months of having platform out there, is that really the perception of some really people who are acting as providers of liquidity has really significantly changed, and they are accepting Bitcoin, and I'm sure that they're learning more about it and all that. So in terms of overall adoption, maybe that's going to be the next step for them to actually let me try it from the other side. Let me buy some Bitcoin, let me try how it works and all that. So I think this could be an interesting way of looking at it as well.
Yeah. Imagine being an institution or family office, don't have any Bitcoin exposure whatsoever. You can still, using Firefish, interact with the Bitcoin in a way that you don't own it, you don't hold any cryptographic material, and Bitcoin is still useful for you. It's securing your transaction with a random person on another site. So even without holding Bitcoin, it's useful for you already. So maybe that can be the first step for you to maybe think about Bitcoin.
I think I first found out about Firefish in May this year during Pizza Day. That's when I became aware of it. You also sponsored the event. You gave t-shirts. And then at BTC Prague, you were also prominent there. You had a very large booth and it was pretty nice. So obviously you did a lot of advertisement, but is the service available today? Can people use it? And if they can, how can they start with it?
These have been actually the only 2 occasions that we've been visible public, so maybe it seems different than it is. So we haven't been speaking too much about it because the Firefish had been there in a closed beta, and it's still in a closed beta. It was mostly for our friends and family and close bubble of Central European Bitcoiners. This is the stage now. Like, we are getting more and more open. I invite all Bitcoiners out there to sign up for our beta. We are inviting mostly European Bitcoiners now to try the platform, though there are still some limitations. I mean, we are limiting the size of the transaction to 2,000 euros, I guess, at this moment. But we'll be relaxing those terms over time, and we plan to launch more open platform towards end of the year. That's it, right?
You said that there's a website which acts as the platform. What is it? Is it firefish.com.io? What's the domain?
It's IO, yes, firefish.io.
Okay, so we covered this, that basically the service is available, but is the code auditable? Is everything about Firefish open source? And why does this matter for the users?
It really matters, and our goal is to have the code open source. The design of the protocol is open source now, although implementation code is not open source at this very moment because it's changing all the time. We have audited one version of the code by a specialized security firm, but we want to open the code once we are kind of settled. We use the same. There is a high chance we will not change the code so much in the future. So this is our approach. It's very important. So the code is open source because it is part of our security proposition. There are many other things we are trying to improve on the security side still. So yes, this is our stage now.
It's also important for the user to make sure that the code does what it says it does. And that's, the best protection for someone who's going to put money in that multi-sig. But the multi-sig itself is not too complicated. I guess what you did not open source is what's on the website and what happens there. And after all, there's a legal contract that you have to sign anyway, so it's not super cypherpunk. You cannot do this anonymously, or can you?
Well, now actually you can to some extent because we are not doing any KYC.
Oh, that's why you have 2,000 euros, right?
Yeah, exactly. now we are basically providing you the software. We don't charge any fees for that. So there is a software at your disposal. Do whatever you want with that and settle your contract with your counterparty according to the contract you signed. It's not up to us too much. But over time, actually, it's going to be a commercial product. So we will most probably need to do KYC for the users. Although we are trying to figure out the ways how to make the burden as little as possible.
The other thing, I mean, regarding KYC and being completely anonymous, I mean, once you touch the banking system, you're not anonymous anymore. First and foremost, you do the KYC through the bank, and secondly, usually when you even receive a transaction, you see the name of the person or the entity that you received the transaction from. So in a traditional bank-to-bank wire system, you can't remain anonymous. But as Martin mentioned, yeah, we're trying to find a way which is going to be the least painful and the most kind of user friendly with the best customer experience. So that's the main aim. But as we mentioned, as we're touching fiat, unfortunately, that's something we'll have to deal with.
Remember the paper wallet? Ah, yes, the good old days when you printed your Bitcoin private key on an offline computer? It was so fun, but not really easy and totally not secure. Today, we have Stablecoins, a chip card that acts just like your good old paper wallet, but with all the modern security features and top-notch functionality. It turns your Bitcoin into a bearer asset, which you can easily trade in person. Thanks to NFC, you can use the Stablecoins card with your smartphone. Creating a new pair of Bitcoin keys takes just 2 swipes. Check your balance in real time, create multiple key pairs. Whenever you want, you can reveal your Bitcoin wallet's private key with just a single click. The simple, uncluttered interface lets you quickly see if a key pair has been unsealed. Finally, the cold storage you've been looking for. Available now on Stablecoins.io.
Unpopular opinion, and someone's gonna cancel me on Twitter for saying this. Would you not have fewer legal requirements if you integrated stablecoins of sorts? So everything happens on a computer network and not on the banking system?
So yeah, disclaimer, I hope they're not going to cancel us on Twitter as well. But yeah, Martin, what's our take on this?
Indeed, you would. Although, like, our proposition, the way how we are thinking about our platform and the contract is, we are trying to reduce as much risk from the interaction as possible. And in our point of view, like, stablecoins are bringing some layer of risk that is hard to comprehend. And it's, for example, you are an institution that wants to invest your money. I don't think many of these institutions have a mandate to buy stablecoins and operate this kind of risk what they cannot assess. So our goal was to make the interaction as risk-free as possible. That's why we took the harder part, and that's why we implemented fiat and banking system and whatnot. It's not easy. It's pain in the ass. Like, to be honest, like, the Bitcoin part is fun, but the banking part, it really is pain in the ass. Anyhow, the implementing stablecoins would allow you to maybe go through less of the overhead in regards to KYC and implementations and this kind of stuff. So, and maybe a little bit more privacy for the parties involved. So it might, like, we might consider to implement stablecoins at some point as an option of I see it as a trade-off. Maybe you prioritize convenience of banking money, or a little bit more privacy and a little bit more risk with the stablecoins, and choice is yours.
I think I should have started the interview with this, but you have this very nice logo with a fire and a fish and a heart and the Bitcoin logo. But why is it Firefish? What does it mean? Is there any deeper meaning behind this?
Guess who's fire, guess who's fish. Oh, really, Martin? I think it's yours, right? So,
Well, it's just random 2 words. Like I would like to make the. It would be nice to bring some some myths and memes and whatnot. But honestly, there is nothing behind. I just thought it's 2 cool words. But can we cut it maybe or something from the interview?
You don't want this to be in.
I'm just joking.
Okay, because I was thinking you could call it Bitcoin loans or whatever. Borrow Bitcoin, borrow against Bitcoin, BAB or whatever. But you went for Firefish, and it's random. Like, what does Firefish mean? It seems like it doesn't have a deeper meaning, but it's catchy. Firefish. Like, are you going to fire your fish, or are you gonna fry your fish? I don't know. There's only one way to find out. You go to firefish.io. It was really nice interviewing you. I'm not sure if I have any more questions, but if you have anything else to say before we wrap this up, this is your chance.
Yeah, maybe I would just highlight, just fellas, feel free to sign up for our beta and help us fireproof the platform. We are still building it. We are thinking we are kind of building a missing piece of Bitcoin infrastructure, in a sense, of the financial infrastructure on Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin native. I think we build it in a Bitcoin native way, and so or maybe check us on Discord as well. What else? What other channels?
Yeah, no, of course we do have a Discord channel, so join us there if you have any questions. We have a 24/7 dedicated support team that is happy to answer your questions. And we're really looking forward to really launching the platform, in many more countries than Czech Republic or Central Europe, because naturally the ambition is global. There are use cases from around the world, so we're looking forward to see many more users on the platform soon.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you for accepting to do this, and I very much like your energy and your spirit and the mission overall to bring more Bitcoin adoption and make it easier for people to use their Bitcoin in the fiat economy. So I look forward to seeing more and hearing more about your service. And thank you very much. They were Martin and Igor. Remember their names.
Thank you, Vlad.
ShopNBit is the online store where you can buy anything with your Bitcoin. Choose between more than 800,000 products, book flights and hotels, and order everything else through the concierge service. With ShopNBit, you can buy your weekly groceries, get the latest iPhone, upgrade your computer, buy something sexy for your new girlfriend, book a trip to El Salvador through the travel hacking service, and also grab a copy of the latest Bitcoin Takeover magazine to read in the airplane. Everything is integrated with a familiar shopping experience that doesn't track you and deletes your data after the order gets completed. You also get a 3% discount if you pay in Bitcoin. Try ShopNBit today and use promo code BTCTKVR for a €5 discount on your first order.